Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, we have again Barb Nangle, and let me tell you a little bit about Barb, a reminder for some of you that saw the first episode. Barb is a boundaries coach, speaker, author, and founder of and CEO of Higher Power Coaching and Consulting, LLC. She's also the host of the podcast Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. And in 2015, at the age of 52, after decades of therapy and tons of self-help in a variety of areas, Barb found herself in a 12-step recovery. She's been in 2 such fellowships since then and has changed deeply and profoundly as a result. As a former addict and people pleaser, she empowers people to thrive and take more control over their personal and professional lives by coaching them to build healthy boundaries. She works with organizations in helping professionals as well as women entrepreneurs to avoid burnout and reduce turnover. Her specialty is working with women to focus on what others think and neglect themselves. Oh, goodness.
I don't want them to focus on what others think.
That's right.
Got it.
And neglect themselves. And I think 2 important points. She's coached hundreds using her exclusive BUILD framework. So we're going to talk today, again, as we mentioned on our last episode, about setting boundaries. So please join me in welcoming Barb Nangle. Barb.
Thank you so much, Vicki. It's really great to be back.
We had such a great conversation before, and as we were doing it, we said we really needed to focus a little bit more on that specific topic of setting boundaries. So all of our questions today will be related to that. But just as a reminder, if you could just tell everybody a little bit about your background of what brought you to do what you do today.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a sociologist by training. I have a master's degree in sociology. I worked for 19 years at Yale University as a program coordinator for urban education prevention and policy research. And while I was working there, I hit a codependent bottom and got into 12-step recovery for codependence, which I didn't even know was a thing, which was shocking for me after so many decades of like all the personal development work. And I started in Codependence Anonymous very quickly, got sort of by accident into ACA, or some people call it ACOA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. That's another 12-step program. I did not know that I qualified for that program. I now know that it's a trauma recovery program where you reparent yourself and you use the 12 steps to recover. And then about a year into that journey, I let go of going to Codependence Anonymous because I started going to Overeaters Anonymous. I didn't know that compulsive eating was a thing or that that was me. I'm now down over 100 pounds from my top weight. So I've done the 12 steps in a variety of ways, a number of times. And though I'm not an addict or an alcoholic, I drank abusively until I was in my early 40s, and I smoked bales of weed over the years, and I'm completely clean and sober now. And of all of the many, many, many life skills, tools, tips, tricks, and mindset shifts that I learned in 12-step recovery, boundaries really changed things for me because I think of
Mm-hmm.
my core wound as being codependence and
Mm-hmm.
boundaries as the antidote to that. So after a couple of years of being in recovery, I got laid off from Yale University and found my way through a series of serendipitous events into the world of startups and innovation and entrepreneurship at Yale and in New Haven, and then started my own coaching and consulting business. And I started my podcast right away, and that was because I wanted all this wisdom from recovery to make its way out into the world because
Yeah.
I didn't know any of this stuff. I mean, I'd been trying my whole life. And I started coaching just sort of generally, and you have to have a niche. And after a couple years, really, with the help of another coach, realized boundaries is a great niche for me. And I think the reason that I'm such a great boundaries coach is because I have the lived experience of 50 something years of no
Yeah.
boundaries. And then I have such healthy boundaries now that I coach people on it. And I know how to articulate like what that experience emotionally was like, what it felt like in my body to not have boundaries, what it feels like in
Mm.
my body to have them, what it feels like emotionally. And the other thing is that I learned how to build healthy boundaries through this sort of like meandering haphazard path through 12-step recovery. It's not like someone sat me down and was like, okay, we're going to build boundaries now. And it took 2 to 3 years for that, for me to have really good boundaries. And then once I realized, wow, these boundaries are amazing, I started reading about them. And as I was reading about them, I would make these drawings to visually depict the principles that I was learning about. And those drawings turned into handouts, which turned into a workbook, which is the backbone of my boundaries coaching program. It's now a multimedia curriculum. So I have 12 modules. So my private clients, I do a 12-week coaching program, and it's very structured, and I've basically accelerated the boundary building process so that people can learn how to build boundaries
Mm-hmm.
even after decades of trying in a matter of weeks rather than through this meandering haphazard path. And
Mm-hmm.
that's led me to where I am now. And then I've really just started pursuing the professional speaking arm of my business in the last year and a half or so, because not only am I able to reach more individual women,
Yes.
but I want to reach organizations that serve women because, as you mentioned, my target audience is professional women who say yes when they really want to say no and who neglect themselves because they're so focused on others. Well, women are not going to make the inroads into the social structures of society when they keep saying yes to things they don't want to do and when they keep neglecting themselves. And so when I speak at organizations, there can be a conversation in the organization, not just for the individual women. And so I'm really
Right.
looking to have more transformations on a larger scale.
Right. So let's just talk about boundaries and setting
Mhm.
boundaries. And so, what unique challenges do entrepreneurs and executives face when it
Mhm.
comes to setting um, and maintaining
Mhm.
boundaries?
Well, their livelihood is at stake.
Hmm. Yeah.
So that, their sense of security. So it can be even more difficult in those settings than in personal life. The kinds of boundaries that I see entrepreneurs having difficulty with are many. I do a lot of networking with especially women entrepreneurs, and most of them suck at boundaries, to be perfectly honest with you. So
Hmm.
that means things like charging well below the market rate for their services. So it's a boundary to charge, and I don't like it when people say charge what you're worth because you're worth more than money can ever possibly buy, but you should
Mm.
be charging at least the market rate for whatever your services are. They don't let go of toxic employees or vendors
Mm.
or clients. So they
Yeah.
they feel like they have to keep these people. They probably are not good at delegating. They feel like they have to do everything themselves. Um, and so it's impossible to do everything well yourself. And it's impossible as an entrepreneur to scale your business if you're trying to do everything yourself. And so learning how to delegate, like what's my responsibility and what it could be someone else's responsibility, those are boundaries. Often they don't take good care of themselves. They work themselves to death. They
Mm.
feel like it's selfish if they engage in self-care on a consistent basis. And I do want to say something about that word selfish. There's something for women where that is basically an epithet to women. You know, like I
Mm.
have a client who said to me one day, um, I would rather be called a whore than selfish. And I was like, wow, what does that say about
Yeah.
our culture when someone would rather be called a whore than selfish? And it's not something that men have to contend with. So if you want to put a
Mhm.
woman in her place, just call her selfish and she
Mhm.
will most likely wither. Well, it's not selfish to put yourself first and to take care of yourself. This is
Yeah.
why when we're on the airplane, they say, hey, if the mask falls down and you're caring for someone, put it on yourself first rather than them first, because if you're passed out,
Help them.
you can't really help them. And then if
Mhm.
you're a mom, you're teaching your children, I'm expendable, and
Mhm.
you're not. And that when they grow up, either they themselves or their wives or their girlfriends will be expendable, and they're not. And so it's really not selfish to take care of yourself and to know what your limits are and to communicate those with other people. And so that, I've said quite a bit about entrepreneurs here. Some of that also applies to professional women, but for professional women, they're afraid that they're going to lose their job or they're not
Yeah.
going to get the promotion or they're going to be overlooked. And if they don't toe the line, then, they're going to lose their job. And, that could actually happen. But what happens for some women is that they are willing to practically die in terms of their mental health and their physical health because of the stress that they go under, rather than entertaining the idea of leaving
Yeah.
and getting a new job. So it can be really, really sticky situation. And, this is one of the reasons why when I start with my clients, we start by having them go through a process to figure out what are their top 5 values, because that's going to tell them
Mm.
like when and where to set the boundaries. Basically,
Yeah.
what you value is how you want to live your life. And if you really want to live your life in such a way and your job is not allowing you to do it, then it's time to think about a new job. Or if your business is not going the way you want it to, it's probably time to bring on some help, to learn to delegate, to take care of yourself, maybe to cut some things away, maybe to raise your prices, maybe to let go of some toxic people, that sort
Mhm.
of thing.
Yeah. And that's so true. In my over 40 years in the corporate world, I just saw that happen time and time again. And it's really to have those core values help you understand that. And as entrepreneurs, when you're deciding, do I work with this person? Do I get this
Mhm.
client? Do I vendor, whomever? And Kim Walsh Phyllis is one of the coaches I have, and she always
Mhm.
says, "I don't need to work with jerks anymore." And then it's
Mhm.
so true.
Mhm.
There's we have that fear that the next thing won't be as good as this, and I'm thinking, well, can't be, or it might be worse than
Yeah.
this, and it's like,
Yeah.
but it could be better. It could be
Yeah.
wonderful, and just try it. you
Yeah.
know, Quitting is not necessarily a sign of weakness or failure. Quitting is just having courage to know that this isn't the right place for you.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And I think we can also make a decision like, I'm going to make the next thing better.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm going to go in there with boundaries from the very beginning, because we always teach people how to treat us. Most of the time, we're teaching them, treat me the same, treat me the same, treat me the same as you always have. But when we start setting boundaries, we're reteaching them. But once you have healthy boundaries and then you go into a new job and you set them right from the very beginning, it's a lot easier to maintain them when that's all they've known of you.
Mhm. So if there's someone out there that's saying, well, I don't think I have any problem setting boundaries, what are some warning signs that you might have weak
Yeah, so I
or
think resentment
non-existent?
Yeah,
Yeah.
resentment is the number one. If you are feeling resentful of people, it's probably time to set a boundary or shore up a boundary. I used to think that I was nice and that was why I was so helpful to people, and that I was really being helpful to people because I wanted to be helpful. And some of that is true, but that doesn't explain that I got to the point where I was resentful of people. And it was
Hmm.
because I was giving, giving, giving way too, I was over giving. So there's
Hmm.
nothing wrong with giving. In fact, there's something very right about giving. And I actually give more service now to my community in terms of hours per week than I ever did back when I was a volunteeraholic. But I do it strategically rather than at the drop of a hat. I do it by choice rather than compulsion or some sense of obligation. And
Hmm.
I do it after filling, my cup first. So I pour from the overflow rather than an empty cup.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's a great visual.
Yeah.
Can you share a personal or professional example of how setting boundaries transformed maybe a business or leadership journey of one of your clients or yourself?
Yeah, I can tell many of them. I have actually coached quite a number of women who are entrepreneurs, and I think probably the first thing they do is raise their prices. So I had one client who was a massage therapist, and she was charging $80, and she would often stay more than an hour. And so, and I mean, I don't normally coach people on pricing, but it was like, this is what she wanted to talk about. And so she ended up upping her prices to, I think it was 120 if you booked one, and 300 if you booked three. She'd never tried booking people for 3 appointments at a time. So
Uh,
that not only raised the per session price for her, but she got some guarantees that these are appointments that are not going to be canceled at the last minute because she'd already been paid for them.
mhm.
And then I had another client who was a social media manager. And she started by doing the social media in a restaurant that she worked with. And then those people owned another one. And so she was charging them pennies and wanted to raise the prices for them. And she just couldn't do it. And so I said, okay, well, you need to come up with some kind of packages. So she came up with 3 tiers of packages that she would sell to future clients that were
Mm,
much more lucrative than what she was doing for these other people. And she gave them parameters like, this is how you will communicate with me. This is what I'm responsible for. This is what you're responsible for. And then she also decided to sell a la carte services. So if they don't want one of those 3 packages, or they have them and they want extra, then they're going to pay a premium for that.
mm,
And she just could not go to those clients and say, these prices are increasing dramatically. So I was like, fine, don't do that. Just start working with the new clients. Well, when the new clients started coming in, and she was like, this is amazing. I'm making way more money. I have a lot more peace. I have less responsibility. They do what I say. So then she was able to go to the other clients because she had that contrast between what she
yes.
was doing with them, bleeding herself dry, and this joyful experience. So she went to them and said, I'm going to give you 2 months, that in 2 months you either go to these packages or we're done. And she kept reminding them and kept reminding them, and like the week before, they're like, what are we going to do? And she said, you're either going to go work with someone else or you're going to buy one of these packages. And they were like, we can't do that. And they just stopped doing social media. But she now had a business that she could feel good about and
Mm-hmm.
get paid something that was actually worth her time, that wasn't draining her. And she made it clear to her clients, like, I create and post your social media. I don't do engagement. I'm
Hmm.
not, and you can't call me or text me at 10 o'clock at night. She got a separate phone that was just for business that she put away, as opposed to giving them her personal cell phone number.
Very good. And really by getting that new business gave her the confidence to know that, if this other business walks away, I still am okay.
Right. And better than okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so she had this guilt that she didn't want to let those people go, but the guilt ended up being overridden by the massive rewards of having these other clients that's how she wanted to work.
Mhm. Yeah. So I know in my past career, I had a lot of high pressure projects and things that I had to manage as a project lead. What would you recommend as strategies for those that need to set boundaries when they're in that high pressure environment, which demands constant eyeballs or
Mhm.
attention?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I think helps people the most is making decisions ahead of time. This is what policies and procedures are in the workplace. This is what job roles are. Like
Hmm.
your role is the boundary of what you're supposed to be doing. And of course, some they can't fit everything necessarily. But
Right.
if you're continually doing something that's not on your, in your role, then that's something that the team needs to take a look at. This is why we have processes and we have policies and we have procedures. We've made decisions ahead of time. This is how we think things are going to work. And then I think also, like, even in like, the only way that you can maintain that high pressure and that fast moving pace is if you are doing assessments on a regular basis, like what's
Hmm.
working, what's not working. Let's do more of what's working, let's do less of
Yeah.
what's not working. And so having touch base with people
Hmm.
about like what's
Check-ins.
happening. And the other thing is, you got to be honest. I thought I was an honest person when I got into recovery. Oh my God, no, I wasn't. I mean, I lied about a lot of things, but I mainly lied in the people pleasing department. But it's actually not helpful to people, and you're out of integrity with yourself when you're lying and saying, like, it could be you're saying that you're going to get something done when you know you're not going to, or you say that something is done that's not. It could be, you saying, yeah, that's fine with me, I can take that on, when it's going to kill you to take on one more thing. I think,
Hmm.
when it comes to having something delegated to you by a boss and you feel like your plate is already overflowing, you can say, listen, I can see how important this is to you, and I want to make it as important to me too, but I'm going to need your input on what comes off of my plate if I'm going to do this, because there's no way that I'm going to get all of these things done as well as this. So you pick. And if they don't want to pick, then you say, well, something is going to fall by the wayside. And if you don't want to pick, then I'm going to pick,
Right.
because it's not realistic for you to, do 7 people's jobs when you're one
Hmm.
human. Is that
And so
helpful?
I think that also touches on, the need to delegate, but then when you delegate, you need to trust that
Mm-hmm.
the people are going to do the work, and
Mm-hmm.
it may not be exactly how you would do
Mm-hmm.
it, but if the
Mm-hmm.
end result is the same, is
Mm-hmm.
successful, then
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I,
And I think like what we want to do is tell them, here's the outcome I want. You get there however you want.
yeah.
And then I don't know if you've ever read the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I
Mhm.
absolutely recommend it for every entrepreneur and professional, especially entrepreneurs, but also professional people. He talks about that very issue, that so many entrepreneurs have such a hard time delegating, especially because they started as a
Yeah, it's their
solo,
baby. Yeah.
and he says,
Hmm.
listen, 80% done is 100% awesome. So you're right. If you're an entrepreneur and you started the company, nobody is going to do things as good as you, but you're never going to scale your business
Right.
if you need everything to be at 100% by everybody at all times. It's just not going to
Hmm.
happen.
Yeah.
Perfection is what is it? What's the saying? Like, perfection is the enemy of the good, or excellence is the enemy of the good, or something like that. Like, if you're not going to progress forward because you have such high standards, then you're not going to have a business. So it doesn't
Mhm.
matter if it's perfect,
Right.
because
Exactly.
you're out of business.
So, what role does self-awareness play then in creating and enforcing your boundaries?
Yeah, I mean, it has everything to do with it. This is why I have people start with their values, because I was such a chameleon. I actually didn't
Mhm.
really know what was okay with me and what was not okay with me, because I just said yes to everything. I went along to get along. I didn't want to make waves. I didn't want to rock the boat. And so when I started building boundaries, that's really what boundaries are. The process of building boundaries is figuring out what is okay with me
Yeah.
and what's not okay with me. What do I like? What do I want? What do I need? What do I prefer? What is my responsibility and what is actually other people's responsibilities? And so you get to know yourself. The way I think of it, Vicki, is like I got to know like the boundaries of Barb. Where do I end and other people begin?
Ah,
And so self-awareness is paramount. And that's what happens with so many of my clients. They're like, I don't know who I am. And so
mm,
boundaries are really about identity. Like if you don't
mm,
know what's okay and not okay with you, you don't really know who you are.
yeah. Seems like a foundational step you need to take.
Absolutely.
So time has flown by, as I knew it
Wow.
would, but you shared so many great things. I have one last question.
Okay.
For entrepreneurs managing, excuse me, client relationships, what tips do you offer to set boundaries without risking business opportunities? And we touched a little bit on this. It kind of goes back to the fear of I need business and I'll take whatever
Mhm,
business I
mhm,
get, but
mhm,
still, how
mhm.
do we manage those relationships?
Yeah. Well, I think if we talk about finding a niche, that's a good way to approach this idea of a boundary. So niches are boundaries. And a lot of people think, well, I don't want to niche down too tightly because I'll push everybody away. But in marketing, we say if you market to everybody, then you market to nobody.
Mm,
And so when you get really tight with your niche, you get well known with those people, you will eventually get other people that are not in your niche, but your people who are your exact right people will hear and see you in a way that other people won't. And when they have such great transformations with you, they will tell other people who are not
mm,
precisely in your niche. So having those boundaries really tight is actually going to grow your business. And then in the beginning, when you start your business, it is true that you may have to take, clients that you don't particularly want to work with, but start writing down what is it about that client that makes you not want to work with them. So one of the things that I realized, Vicki, is for me, before I start working with them, if they can't tell me this is what I want my life to look like when I have healthy boundaries, I'm not going to work well with them because if you don't know what you want your life to look like, how can I possibly help to get you there?
exactly.
Right. So
Exactly.
so start making note of what are the qualities of the people. So it could be individual personal qualities, but it could be like whatever their story is or their logistics or something like that. Start making note of what works for you and what doesn't work for you so that when you get to the
Mm,
point where you can be more choosy, then you can be more choosy. And then the other thing that I have that happens with people all the time, entrepreneurs, is that their clients do scope creep. So they'll set up, we're going to do that. I'm going to do XYZ for you, and this is the price. And then the client comes along and says, well, I also need you to do ABC. And a lot of entrepreneurs just feel like they have to do that without raising the price. So what I recommend is saying, this is amazing. I'm so great. You're so pleased with my work that you want more from me. That's not part of our original agreement. If you want to change it, then I can send you a proposal about how much that's going to cost. So you
mm.
make it very clear, I'm so grateful and appreciative that you want more from me, and there's going to be a cost for that.
So then you're upfront and you're honest and
Mhm.
mm,
And you don't get
yeah,
resentful of those
yeah,
clients.
that's exactly what I was thinking. And it goes back to what we
Yeah.
started.
hmm hmm
Well, if you all have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, again, she's really shared a lot of great ideas and starting points for you. But if you think, I really need to have Barb help me, I'm going to share, as always, her contact information on a slide. If you're listening, you know that you can go to Vicki Noethling YouTube channel to be able to get all this information or my findyourleadershipconfidence.com. So if those listening, the website is higherpowercc.com podcast. That's her website, higherpowercc.com. And then to see her podcast, go to podcasts. Her LinkedIn is her name, Barb Nangle, Nangle. Her Instagram is Higher Power Coaching. Facebook is the same, but with initial cap. So Higher Power Coaching. And YouTube is at Higher Power Coaching. She's going to talk to you about all of the things that she has coming up podcast wise and where she spends maybe the most time on social media, that if you wanted to DM her and get a more rapid response, you can go ahead and do that. So go ahead and chat it with us about your call to action.
Yeah, so my call to action is I have a free boundary building starter kit. It's at boundariesstarterkit.com. And this is for you if you say yes when you really want to say no, if you neglect yourself because you're so focused on other people, you want the right words to say to people, and so much more. It's a multimedia kit. It's very robust. There's like 9 videos, a playlist of my 40-something episodes specifically about boundaries. By the way, I'm about to record episode 300 of my podcast. And my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram and Higher Power Coaching. Go ahead and DM me there. And for my podcast, you can find me on any podcast outlet, or you can go to fragmented2whole.com, and that will take you there.
Fragmented2whole.com. All right. So glad that we could do this second episode on this and really delve deeper into setting boundaries. I think it's especially, we're in the first quarter of the new year, and people are reassessing, reflecting on last year to see what we can do differently in this new year. And I think this is a great way to have a fresh start.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.